Pam Bondi walked briskly down the dimly lit street, her heels clicking against the pavement, each step a steady rhythm in the quiet evening air. The city had begun its slow descent into night, neon signs flickering to life, casting distorted reflections onto the wet concrete. A slight chill lingered, wrapping around her like an invisible shroud, but she paid it little mind. She was lost in thought, her mind preoccupied with the usual weight of the day's obligations. But then, something caught her attention, a figure, hunched over near the entrance of a closed convenience store, barely illuminated by the sickly glow of a street lamp. He sat on a tattered piece of cardboard, his arms wrapped around himself for warmth, a small, dented cup in front of him, its metallic surface reflecting a dim glimmer of hope each time a passerby spared a coin. His clothes were ragged, layers of mismatched fabric draped over his frail frame, the edges frayed and stained. His hair, an unkempt tangle of graying strands, fell over his gaunt face, partially obscuring his sunken eyes that flickered up only occasionally to scan the crowd for a potential act of kindness. Pam slowed her pace, her gaze locked onto him. Something about the way he sat, resigned, yet still holding on, struck a chord deep within her. She had seen homelessness before, countless times in cities just like this, and she had given money in passing, donated to charities, spoken about the issue in professional circles. But here, now, in this fleeting moment, it was different. He was real. Not a statistic, not a topic of discussion. A man, alone in the cold, clinging to whatever dignity remained. He wasn't calling out, wasn't aggressively seeking attention. He simply existed in quiet desperation. The sign next to him, hastily scribbled on a piece of torn cardboard, read, "Hungry. Anything helps." Simple. Honest. Devoid of pretense. Pam hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. A group of people walked by, their laughter ringing through the night as they passed without so much as a glance in his direction. Another person, dressed in business attire, walked past briskly, their gaze fixed forward, deliberately avoiding acknowledgement. The man sighed, lowering his eyes again, his shoulders hunching as if to make himself smaller, invisible. Something about that subtle movement, that silent acceptance of being overlooked, pushed Pam forward. She reached into her purse, her fingers brushing against the smooth leather of her wallet. But then she stopped. Simply tossing a few bills into his cup felt impersonal, transactional. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering herself slightly to his level. "Hey," she said gently. The man looked up, startled. His eyes, deep-set and tired, searched hers with wary curiosity. He blinked, as if unsure whether she was truly speaking to him. "I saw your sign," she continued, nodding toward it. "Are you looking for food?" He hesitated before nodding. "Yeah," he rasped, his voice rough, weathered by time and hardship. "Just. Anything helps." Pam studied him for a moment. There was no deception in his voice, no manipulation in his tone, just raw exhaustion. She exhaled softly. "How much do you need?" His brow furrowed slightly, as if the question confused him. He shrugged. "Whatever you can spare." Pam reached into her purse again, but this time, she didn't pull out a few crumpled bills. Instead, she withdrew a crisp $100 bill and held it out to him. The man's eyes widened, his breath hitching in his throat as he stared at the money. "Wait. What?" He blinked rapidly, as if he suspected his eyes were playing tricks on him. Why are you giving me this?" His fingers trembled slightly as he hesitated to take it, his gaze shifting between the bill and her face, searching for some hidden condition. Some unspoken expectation. Pam smiled faintly. "Because you need it." Pam Bondi watched as the man hesitated, his fingers hovering just above the crisp $100 bill, his expression shifting between disbelief and cautious hope. His eyes darted up to meet hers, searching her face for some ulterior motive, some condition attached to this unexpected act of generosity. "Are you serious?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, thick with both gratitude and suspicion. "Why are you doing this?" He finally took the bill, handling it with the care of someone who had not held that much money in a long time. His hands, rough and calloused, trembled slightly as he turned it over, almost as if expecting it to vanish in his grip. "Because I want to," Pam said simply, offering a small smile. "I saw you sitting here, I saw your sign, and I felt like helping." The man let out a breath, shaking his head in disbelief. A grin, small and tentative, began to form on his weathered face. "You have no idea what this means to me," he said, still staring at the bill, almost afraid to put it away, as if the moment might end too soon. "I can actually get something real to eat. Not just scraps. I can sit down somewhere warm." His voice cracked slightly at the end, and he swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. Pam could see it in his eyes. This was more than just money. It was dignity. A moment of kindness in a world that had long since stopped caring about him. "How long have you been out here?" she asked, genuinely curious, her tone gentle, not prying. The man sighed, rubbing the back of his neck before answering. "A year, give or take," he admitted. "Lost my job, then my place. Things spiraled fast. One minute, you think you're just having a rough patch, the next, you're sleeping on sidewalks, hoping people see you as human instead of just part of the background." Pam nodded, listening. She had heard stories like his before, but hearing it directly from him, seeing the weight of it in his posture, made it different. Made it real. "Do you have family?" she asked carefully. He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Had," he said. "Not anymore. Some drifted away, some just didn't want to deal with me once I hit rock bottom. It's funny, people love you when you're doing well. When you're struggling, they disappear." Pam felt a pang in her chest. She had never experienced homelessness, never come close, but she knew loss. She understood what it meant to be abandoned, to be left to fend for yourself when you needed help the most. "What's your name?" she asked, realizing she had been talking to him this whole time without knowing. He blinked, as if the question surprised him. "Nathan," he said after a pause. "Nathan Cole." "Nice to meet you, Nathan," she said, offering her hand. He looked at it, hesitated, then shook it, his grip firm despite the cold. "Nice to meet you too, Mississippi." "Pam," she said. "Just Pam." He nodded, still looking at her like she was some kind of mirage. "You really just gave me $100 for no reason?" "There's a reason," she said. "I believe people deserve a second chance. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to help." Nathan exhaled, shaking his head again, a wide grin breaking through his exhaustion. "You just made my entire year, Pam. I don't even know how to thank you." "You don't have to," she said. "Just promise me something." He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Eat something good tonight," she said. "Something warm, something that makes you feel human again." Nathan let out a small laugh, nodding. "I can do that." He tucked the bill carefully into the inner pocket of his worn-out coat, as if protecting it from disappearing. "You know," he said after a moment, his voice softer now, "most people don't even look at me. They walk past like I don't exist. But you stopped. That alone means more than you know." Pam felt a lump form in her throat. "People should see you, Nathan. You matter." He looked away for a moment, blinking rapidly. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Really?" "You're welcome," she said. "And who knows? Maybe this isn't the last time we see each other." Nathan chuckled. "I hope not." Pam gave him one last smile before stepping back. She turned, beginning to walk away, but something in her gut told her this wasn't over. There was more she could do, more she wanted to do. Pam Bondi watched as the man sat frozen, staring at the crisp $100 bill in his hands like it was something out of a dream. His fingers trembled as he turned it over, as if expecting it to dissolve between his calloused fingertips. His breath hitched, his sunken eyes widening in disbelief before flicking back up to meet hers. "Why?" he asked, his voice a rough whisper, thick with shock and something else, something deeper, almost like suspicion, as if kindness this genuine was something foreign to him. "Why would you do this?" Pam tilted her head slightly, offering a small, warm smile. "Because I want to," she said simply. "I help people who need it. It makes me happy to do something good, to know I can make someone's day a little easier." Nathan's throat bobbed as he swallowed, shaking his head slowly. I don't know what to say," he murmured, still gripping the bill tightly like it might disappear if he loosened his hold even slightly. "No one's ever done something like this for me. Not in a long time." Pam studied him, noting the way his shoulders were hunched inward, the way he almost seemed to be bracing himself, as if expecting some kind of catch. "How long have you been out here?" she asked gently. Nathan let out a heavy breath, his fingers absently running over the fabric of his tattered coat. "A year," he admitted. "Maybe more. Lost my job first, then my apartment. Thought I could bounce back, but things kept getting worse. It's funny, when you hit rock bottom, you think you'll find a way up. But sometimes, you just keep falling." Pam felt her chest tighten. She had never been in his position, never faced the kind of daily battle he did, but she could hear the weight in his voice. The exhaustion. The resignation. He wasn't just telling a story, he was laying out his reality, piece by piece. "Did you have anyone?" she asked. "Family? Friends?" Nathan let out a bitter chuckle, shaking his head. "I had people," he said. "But when things got bad, they disappeared. It's easy to be around someone when they're doing well. Not so easy when they're struggling. People stop answering calls. Stop checking in. After a while, you realize you're on your own." His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, a quiet pain that made Pam's heart ache. She had seen loneliness before, but this was different. This was isolation so deep it had become a part of him. "That's not how it should be," she said softly. "Nobody should have to go through this alone." Nathan exhaled sharply, shaking his head again as he glanced down at the money in his hands. "You don't owe me anything, Pam," he said, his voice quieter now. "You don't have to do this." "I know," she said. "That's why I want to." He looked at her for a long moment, as if trying to figure her out. As if searching for some hidden reason behind her kindness. But there wasn't one. And that, more than anything, seemed to unnerve him. Finally, he let out a slow breath, a small, genuine smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "I don't even know where to start." Pam smiled back. "You don't have to. Just promise me something." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Eat something good tonight," she said. "Something real, something warm. No fast food. No scraps. A real meal." He chuckled, shaking his head in amusement. "I think I can manage that." He tucked the bill carefully into his coat, his hands still unsteady, as if the reality of the moment hadn't quite settled in yet. "You know," he added after a pause, "most people don't even look at me. They walk by like I don't exist. But you stopped. That means more than the money. Just being seen." Pam felt a lump form in her throat. "You deserve to be seen, Nathan," she said. "You deserve more than this." He blinked rapidly, looking away for a moment, his jaw tightening. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with something unspoken. "Really?" "You're welcome," she said. "And who knows? Maybe this won't be the last time we see each other." He smiled, a real, grateful smile. "I hope not." Pam nodded, giving him one last glance before stepping back, turning to walk away. But even as she did, something in her gut told her this wasn't over. There was more she could do, more she wanted to do. Pam Bondi saw the way Nathan's eyes flickered with something between hope and disbelief when she told him she had a surprise for him. He had spent too much time expecting disappointment, too much time living with nothing, to truly believe that someone could offer him something without expecting anything in return. But Pam saw past that hesitation, past the years of hardship that had built up walls around him, and she smiled reassuringly. "Just trust me," she had said, and for the first time in a long time, Nathan wanted to. That night, he slept in the same spot he had been sleeping for months, but something was different. There was an unfamiliar warmth inside him, a spark of something he thought he had lost long ago, hope. The next day, just as the morning chill was lifting from the streets, he heard the sound of approaching footsteps, and before he even looked up, he knew it was her. Pam stood before him, wearing the same kind expression as the night before. "You ready for that surprise?" she asked. Nathan sat up, rubbing the exhaustion from his eyes, his mind still struggling to believe that this was real. I guess," he said cautiously. "Where are we going?" "You'll see," Pam said with a knowing smile. She gestured for him to follow, and after a brief hesitation, he did. As they walked through the city, Nathan felt the weight of the stares around him. People who had ignored him the day before now took notice, their eyes darting between his ragged clothes and Pam's polished presence, silently wondering why she was walking with him. He was used to feeling invisible, used to being just another forgotten face in a sea of people who moved past him without a second thought. But now, walking beside Pam, he felt seen in a way that was both unsettling and strangely comforting. They turned a corner, and suddenly, Nathan found himself standing in front of a small apartment building. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, well-maintained, and most importantly, it was shelter. He looked at Pam, confusion creasing his features. "What is this?" Pam reached into her purse, pulled out a key, and held it out to him. "This," she said, "is yours." Nathan stared at the key as if she had just handed him something from another world. "Wait." "What?" he breathed, shaking his head. "No. This can't be." "Pam, what are you saying?" Pam smiled, pressing the key into his trembling palm. "I'm saying that this is your new home, Nathan." His breath caught in his throat, his legs suddenly feeling unsteady beneath him. You're serious?" His voice cracked, raw with emotion. "You're giving me a place to live?" "Yes," she said simply. "No more sleeping on the streets. No more wondering where you'll stay when it rains. This is yours now." Nathan's knees nearly buckled. He clutched the key so tightly his knuckles turned white, his mind struggling to process what was happening. "Why? Why would you do this for me?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Pam's eyes softened. "Because everyone deserves a second chance. And because I believe you can turn things around if someone just gives you the opportunity." Nathan swallowed hard, his vision blurring as tears threatened to spill over. I don't know how to thank you," he choked out. This is more than I ever thought I'd have again." "You don't have to thank me," Pam said. "Just promise me you'll take care of yourself. That you'll use this chance to build something better." Nathan nodded vigorously, his chest heaving with emotion. "I will. I swear I will." Pam placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder before leading him inside. The apartment was small but fully furnished, clean sheets on the bed, a stocked fridge, even a set of new clothes waiting for him. Nathan ran a trembling hand over the countertop, as if trying to convince himself that this was real. "This is mine," he murmured, almost to himself. "I have a home." "You do," Pam confirmed. "And that's not all." Nathan turned to her, still overwhelmed. "What do you mean?" "I got you a job," she said, and his breath hitched. "It's nothing fancy, but it's a start. A friend of mine runs a small business, and they're willing to give you a shot. You'll earn enough to buy what you need to rebuild." Nathan pressed a hand to his face, trying to keep himself together, but the emotions were too much. "Pam." "I don't deserve this," he said shakily. You do," she interrupted gently. "You do, Nathan." He let out a shaky breath, then, for the first time in a long time, he smiled, a real, genuine smile. "I won't waste this," he vowed. "I promise." Pam smiled back. "I know you won't." and for the first time in over a year, Nathan felt like his life wasn't over. It was just beginning.